Shalom, I'm Nama Rue. This is my husband, Rabbi David Rue. And I really need to know when it's time to harvest my vegetables, what are the ways I can do it with a Shinui, doing it different from the normal way I do it?
All right. There is a Mishnah in Shvis that says, Taanim shel Shvis, figs of the Shmita year, ein kotzim otam במוקצה, you cannot harvest them with a מוקצה, אבל קוצה אותם בחרבה, but you can harvest them with a בחרבה. Now, what this means is a debate. So the ברטנורא, his commentary in the Mishnah, along with the Rash and the Rosh and Tosos, understand it as follows: ein קוצין osel במוקצה, you cannot harvest it with a מוקצה. כלי מיוחד לקוץ בו תאנים, קרוי מוקצה. A tool that is unique for harvesting תאנים, figs, is called a מוקצה.
Okay.
אבל קוצה אותם בחרבה, but you can harvest them with בחרבה. סכין, לשון חרב. It's a knife, and it comes from the word חרב, sword. So a tool that's used for harvesting, according to them, you're not allowed to use to harvest with. The Rambam, however, in Shmita, learns as follows: Sפיח קצירך תקצור. What does it mean when it says that you're going to harvest the fruit that's out there? יקצור כדרך שקוצר בכל השנה. You're not allowed to harvest the way you harvest in every other year. ואם קצר בדרך הקוצרים לוקה. And if you do harvest in the way of the normal harvest, you would get lashes. כגון שקצר כל השדה, ועמיד קרי ודש בבקר. That is to say, I harvest my entire field, I create a pile of grain, I thresh it with cattle, or שקצר לעבודת הארץ, כמו שדיברנו, or you harvest for the work of the field, as I said, אלא קוצר מעט מעט, but you have to harvest a little bit at a time. So the Rambam doesn't seem to care how you harvest. He cares about the quantity you harvest. You're only allowed to harvest a little bit at a time, according to Rambam. But this leaves a question: how does the Rambam understand the Mishnah? Because the Mishnah seems to say you can't harvest with a muktzah, which is as we saw, a utensil used specifically for harvesting. In the Perush Mishnayos, the Rambam there on that Mishnah says, muktzah, shem makom sheshotchin bo peros lityabesh ka'on te'enim va'anavim, that the muktzah is a place that you spread out the fruit to dry, like people typically do with figs and grapes and so on. So it's the place that you do it, not how you do it. So we have two entirely different approaches. The general approach is to be machmir for both of them, meaning we don't harvest using a tool typically used for harvesting, and we do not harvest the whole field or all of our crop at one time.
Like usually it would be like, I only harvest what I'm going to use today. But if I'm harvesting a larger field for, an agricultural, service, then you do less quantity than usual.
Hold on. Let's look at the Chazon Ish, and because the Chazon Ish was more or less a contemporary, living in the last century, and see how he dealt a lot with Shmita. So the Chazon Ish first in Siman Yud Beis, paragraph 8, writes as follows: Rav Ovadia mi Bartnorã, mashma da alakita b'mechubar kai. According to the way the Rash and the Bartnorã explain our Mishnah, it seems to be talking about how you gather it from being connected to the ground. Like I've already explained there. And the changes that you have to do in harvest are rabbinic in nature. Like I've already done there. And according to those that say that what this Mishnah is talking about is concerning harvest, it's only if it's possible to do it in a different way. Aval b'mkom de lo efshar, but if it's impossible to harvest it in any other way, shar, then it would be permitted. De lo tani la b'kol mile, because it didn't teach this, the Mishnah didn't teach this about all types of crops, only certain types of crops. La shmuin and Shinui b'ktzira, to teach us when it's teaching us that we should use a Shinui, a change in the way we harvest. V'kevan de la Rambam la'olam ein Shinui be'etzem ktzira ve'betzira. And according to the Rambam, there's never any change in the way you harvest, even for the things mentioned in the Mishnah. Ela hashinui shalosh sei kamut rav. The Rambam says the change is you cannot harvest as much as you would normally harvest. You cannot harvest a large amount. Ubederach balut, or in the way of the owner of the field. Ve'asomech lahakel liktof lilkot me'at mina hefker below shinui b'mkom she'iyavshar lishnot lo hifsit. So he says, if for the person that is harvesting a small amount, like the Rambam says, in an abnormal way, he doesn't have to use an abnormal way, he hasn't lost anything. V'im kotvim la'otzer shel beistin, but if we're harvesting for the otzer beistin, b'shvil kol b'nei ha'ir, so that the entire city can benefit from it, or the entire country, in case of otzer eretz, ein tzarech lishnot. In that case, you don't have to change it all, because it's not, I'm not harvesting it for myself at all, harvesting for something else. So that's one place in the Chazon Ish. And another place in the Chazon Ish, in chapter Chavav 26, paragraph Vav, he talks about harvesting things during the Shmita. Avalhem kedeshim b'kedusha shviz. Even though these things were allowed to harvest them, they nonetheless have the sanctity of the Shmita year. Umuter lashkosam kedesh lo yityabshu v'yamusu. You're allowed to water them enough so that they don't die. V'tzarech linhog behem hefker, but you have to treat them as if they're ownerless. Umiter lekot mehem le'achila. I'm allowed to gather them to eat. Aval lo yilkot harbe bebas achas, but I can't gather a lot at one time. Ela lo keshir sha'adam mechin bebeisa lishtamesh b'vnei beisa liyamim muatim. But I can harvest enough for what my family can use in a few days, not a large number of days, just a few days.
Before it rots.
So canning and something like that would seem to be problematic.
But you can make wine from Shmita grapes.
Yes, because that's the normal thing that's done out of the wine. We discussed earlier there might be a problem making raisins out of it, because that might be a secondary use.
Preserving it? You're not supposed to preserve things?
Well, if this is something that the normal way of doing this is preserving it, is pickling it, then it might be permitted. Malafathon, cucumbers that are grown for pickling, and there are those, then it would seem that pickling them would be permitted. There becomes an isser of that we have to be mafkir them at a certain point. We have to do beer. We have to get them out of the house at a certain point when this harvest is no longer found around, and so on. But that's for later year. Echad bal habayis alokek, the echad achirim shaloktim. It doesn't matter whether the owner of this field is gathering or anyone else, because it's hefker. No one owns it. Anyone can gather at this point. T'me'acher shehifker, because after he's made it ownerless, he's not trying. Af bal habayis mutter liskos bin hefter. Even the owner of this field or yard or whatever can acquire it from being ownerless. Umutter lilkot shir hamutter, and you're allowed to gather the amount that one is allowed to gather, meaning only enough for your household for a few days. Afimein dato laochlan ela lemochran leacherin. Even if your intent isn't to eat them, but to sell them to someone else. Meaning, I'm allowed to harvest to sell. I'm just only allowed to harvest as much as I would eat in a few days. It's not a normal commercial operation. K'shemochrin halokeach ochlan b'kedusha shviz. And when I sell them, I have to make known to the person who's purchasing that they have to eat them with the sanctity of Shmita fruit. V'lo lasos behem schara, and they're not allowed to do any business with them. They can't resell them. Once they purchase them, that's it. Ve'amocher tzarech likach b'damim shekibel ochlin v'la ochlan b'kedusha shviz. And the only thing that I can do with the money that I receive from this product, from these things they sell, because it has the sanctity of Shmita, is to buy other food. It can be any type of food, but that food then has the sanctity of Shmita on it, and I have to be sure to eat it with the sanctity of Shmita. So if I bought meat, right, I have to eat it all up, just like I'd have to eat the fruit of Shmita all up.
Wait. What?
I harvest peppers,
Right.
and I sell $10 of peppers to my neighbor.
Okay.
I now have $10. The only thing I can buy with this is food.
Right.
I'm going to go out and buy meat. All right? That's what I want to buy.
Okay.
Because I
So
have a
now
large
that
garden
has
that has
the
everything.
Kedusha Shvi'it.
Now that meat has the sanctity of Shmita. And I have to treat it with all the other things, the sanctity of Shmita. I can't waste it. I have to make sure that I only take enough, on my plate that I can eat it all right now.
Gotcha.
Right? All of those various things would apply to this meat that normally apply to those things that have the sanctity of Shmita.
Okay.
Now, this leaves a question that why does a Shinui work here? Or why do we talk about a Shinui here where we don't talk about it? Other things that we can, why can't we plow a field using a Shinui? Whatever, what can't we do? Why is it unique to this thing that there is a Shinui in harvesting and not other things? And that will be the next year.
Thank you.